welcome back. You land on the 3% podcast. Thank you so much for joining and tuning in. If you like what you heard on our current episodes, please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, share with your friends, follow us on Instagram. We're also on YouTube and everywhere podcasts are played, Apple Podcasts and the like. So I'm Dr. Tasani Watson, and welcome to the rest of the cast.
And yeah, I'm Dr. Rochelle Sharkey, if you didn't already know.
Dr. Cortez Lewis.
Dr. Adesola Fade.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about boards. Boards. What can we say? So in optometry school, you have to take 3 national board exams. Part 1 of national boards occurs in your 3rd year. So the 3rd year is about to take it. When we took it, it was a 2-day exam. Each exam was about 8 hours, y'all, right? So it was a 2-day exam, 8 hours each day. You're in a test room, multiple choice. It was pretty terrible. It was torture. All right, so that's part 1. And then part 2, you take during your 4th year in December. And then part 3, you take anytime during your 4th year. And that's more of a clinical skills exam. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about test anxiety, how we conquered boards, when you were taking boards, and just let you guys know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Boards sucked, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, all right? So even though it's really hard, you have to do it. Every type of profession has to take some type of national board exam. Ours are coming up soon, and so here are our stories. So I'll talk about test anxiety specifically. So for part 1 of national boards, I had really, really bad test anxiety. It's when I learned how bad it was. You're studying, not sleeping well, not eating well. It's just the nature of the beast. And when I went in to take part 1 of national boards, on my way driving home on the highway in South Florida, I threw up in my car. That's how bad my anxiety was, after taking the test. Everything's just all pent up, and you don't really realize how rigorous of an exam it was or how stressed out your body is until it's all over with. And so I know a lot of my colleagues here have similar stories about what they went through during boards. So I'm going to open up the floor to you guys now. Don't all go at one time.
It's tough. It's tough. You all got some stories. We know that it was tough times at the time, but we're on the other end now. So we can actually look back and say, hey, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The biggest thing is preparation. So everybody's going to prepare differently for this test. The people you studied with before, when you get down to the nitty gritty, you might be solo by yourself. But always remember, everybody's going through this at the same time, right? It's heavy on your heart the entire time. So I would say rest is important. Still doing the things you were doing when you were in school. If you hit the gym, go to the gym, take an hour, go de-stress yourself. That's very important when you're studying for these big tests, because your mind needs those breaks. I remember just studying. You get KMK. You got so many different sources, and you're wondering what should I study? What material? What's going to be the most helpful? And I would say a combination of whatever you have. I had test banks here, KMK. I had things I did online. Just a combination of things. Opto prep. So many different things. You put those things together, and then you start to piece it down. You take each and every question, and you learn hey, why is this answer correct, and why the other answers? If I miss this, I need to know why these other ones would make sense. You got to be able to put those things together analytically. So, and you will, when you get on the test, you'll start to see hey, these other ones don't really make no sense, but I do know this. I did read a little bit about this. Maybe that's the answer. And you'll get a lot of those. Pick 1, pick 2. Maybe it's all of the above. And what you really want to remember when you're studying is when you get to test day, you're still not going to feel like you studied enough. You're still not going to feel like you went through everything. You're going to be the day of that morning trying to go learn that last minute thing that you thought you needed to know that's not even on the test, right? So prepare yourself. When you prepare yourself, you get to the test and you realize hey, I prepared so hard and I'm ready that the question wasn't that bad. They was bad, but I could get through it. Yeah. And some of it was on the most basic level, hey, a polycarbonate lens is this. Dang, I ain't have to think too hard about that. I know that. Yeah. So a lot of it you're going to see when you get to the test that, hey, I studied hard, I prepared myself, and you're gonna second guess on a lot of things. I always say, don't second guess. What you know is what you know, and that's probably going to be the answer. If you second guess, that's when you're going to beat yourself up towards the end when you hear everybody else say, hey, I put that. Oh, man, I ain't put that. I thought it should have been this. No, your mind told you to put what it was because you know the information. So don't overwhelm yourself. Keep living life. Study because you got to study, right? But then don't forget about it's optometry. It's a little portion of your life inside of this big world that we live in. So don't weigh yourself down. It's going to be a light on the end of the tunnel. Just keep pressing forward.
Yeah, because a lot of times with standardized tests, it's all about repetition. You'll kind of start seeing the patterns of the way they ask questions, what they're actually really looking for. So if you could really catch on to that, it's not even sometimes about what you know, is your strategies of how to take on each question. So that was something I felt I really had to learn, you know, when it came to test taking in general, but test taking as far as these standardized tests, because I was never the best standardized test taker. I definitely have a story we're about to share here in just a second, but y'all gonna hear what I have to say about how, you know, it won't just be the end. You know, sometimes you are gonna fail. Me personally, did not pass part 1 or 2 the first time around. And I feel like I had so much going on at that time. My focus was definitely off. You know, there's a lot of things personally that I was going through, and mentally I was there, but then I still was kind of checked out. I remember even like going into our first day of studying, like we got our books and everything. I didn't realize we had a study prep that day. So my mindset was, it wasn't there like it should have been. And when I failed, I definitely could have let it get the best of me, but I decided to take it elsewhere and reach out and, you know, get people's advice on how to study. Because generally, I mean, when you think about it, life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how you respond to it. So, you know, instead of trying to take that moment and be down about it, I took that moment to be like, okay, I'm gonna turn this around and figure out why I was, you know, not doing as well as I thought. And to be clear, I didn't pass by, it wasn't like a whole lot, it was 3 questions. And then when it came to part 2, again, it was 3 questions. I'm like, what's wrong? Why is it always 3? Like, what's with this 3 questions? And, you know, you kind of may get down on that. And again, as Tasani said, we were the last class that, you know, had these 2 8-hour days of part 1. So imagine having to do that twice. Y'all are so lucky now to not have to do it the way we did. Because when y'all was mentally drained, I was literally drained from that. But, you know, the scores went up. And if you look at my scores now from when I started to now, you know, definitely I needed that. Yeah.
You know, I commend you, Rochelle, because I mean, when we were in that process with you, you know, fortunately enough for the situation, you know, you shared with us what happened, and I think that moment really helped us all get closer to one another because we were able to be there for one another in that situation. And that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's going through their individual process with this exam. You know, this exam is the great neutralizer. It is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter what you did in school. You could have cheated your whole way through every test. You could test packet your way through every test. That's cool. That's great. But at the end of the day, you still got one test. You can't exit without, you still got to pass that one test. And then guess what? You could be a marginal student all the way through. And guess what? You passed that one test, you solid. You solidified and you certified. Nobody can tell you nothing, right? So you don't have to be this A student the whole time in school, and because everything you need to know is gonna be in them 3 national board exams. And you do that, you have showed and put on display that you got what it takes to be out there in the street, in them streets. You know, but it is exactly what everybody said. Everyone has the process, and what this experience does for you is it's obviously physical. It's I mean I'm talking about 3 months of maybe 2-3 hours of sleep. You're physically going through a stressful time. For someone like me, I've never done well on any standardized test my whole life. So the pressure that mounted on me of I've got to do well on this test was severe, right? But a lot of it is mental as well. The majority of it, I believe, is mental. Of course, and how you tactfully attack how you're going to study and do what you're going to do. And if y'all know, if anybody knows me, y'all know I'm going to study the meat. That's the 3 things I do. I'm going to study the meat. Now, how I did that through the actual board exam is beyond me. But I that's just, hey, I thank God for that wisdom. But I think I studied for boards probably for about a month and a half. And that's pretty much because I'm not an early studier. I can't do the whole study a little by little. That's not how I work. I need to, like, when I hunker down and like focus, that's when it all comes together for me. So I'm that kind of person. But so there's that. But then it's that mental, man. It's what it does to you mentally. And I want to encourage anybody who, you know, may be in a similar situation like any one of us, you know, where we, you know, nobody's really the best standardized test taker. We all kind of struggle a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And if you're, you know, in those situations where you're probably, you know, in the program now, and you're going through it and you're struggling with this whole process, your self-doubt, struggling with the, you know, can I do this? Am I worthy enough to be here? You know, am I good enough? Am I smart enough? All these things. I want to encourage you, man. You're looking at 4 people who stand before you today, super successful. Mind you, everybody's highly successful in their own right. And mind you, Rochelle just talked about how she didn't do well, but Rochelle makes more money than all of us come by. Like, she is killing us in the finance department here. Rochelle is killing us. And she's killing the game, and she's doing all the stuff that she wants to do in her life, and everything that she's wanting in life she's gotten it. She's done what she wanted to do. So it shows you that it doesn't matter what it is. You're looking at people who have been through that process just like you have, you know, and have seen the whole process through the ups and the downs. And no matter what it is, every experience made us who we are today, made us not just the clinicians that we are, but the people that we are today. Those experiences, those moments we go back to and say, listen, man, I remember when I was doing this. If I can go through that and deal with that, I can deal with what's in front of me right now, right? You use these things to build you up. And that's what the situation is. And that's what we want to present to you today, is that everybody has their own journey, right? And you can get through this process. And I will tell you, I'm a spiritual person. I'll say that you keep your faith alive, keep your faith strong. You pray up, you know what I'm saying? You pray up and you believe in what you believe in, and believe that it'll come to you. You know what I'm saying? So with that, you know, that's what I want to add. And
I would
look at everybody. Go ahead.
To hop on what you and Rochelle were talking about, the grades you make or don't make does not really determine who you are or who you will be as a clinician. All right. Some of us barely pass, you know. If the TMI said the minimum is 75, I made a 76. So I was just like thanking God, because God knew that, yeah, he ain't gonna be able to take it twice. Then he gonna let him pass now, right? And then there's people who may have missed that TMI, made a 74, 73. That doesn't mean I was no better than them. It just means that I picked one or more right than them. They might have second guessed themselves and pulled themselves back, but that doesn't mean that they weren't capable of doing it, right? So you got to think about the whole person. And I always say, like, if you're missing questions, that's a time where you can learn, right? When you learn the most, and you're confident in what you learn when you have made the mistake. I can easily get a question right. That doesn't mean I knew it. That means I could have probably just picked the right one. But if I missed it, now I have to force myself to understand why I missed it. So people who fail, and you're going to have people in your class that fail. It's part of the game, but that doesn't mean those people are not going to see you on the other end. And failing does not mean you're not going to graduate with an OD behind your name. You will still graduate as an optometrist. You just have to pass those boards to be able to practice, and for whatever state you're going to practice in. So I commend it, actually, those people who have to take it 2-3 times, because I know that I take it, I get my grade. The next time, it just might keep going down. And that's a battle. Confidence thing. You know, you got to be able to fail and then go back up. I would have had a little hard time, and the Lord knows me. So he let me through the gate. But I mean, people like Rochelle and others that had to do it several times, like that's tough. And I respect it.
Yeah, because for me, I don't even feel it was a confidence thing, because I was confident in myself going into all these tests. the whole thing about having to go through the whole process was the whole mentally draining part of it all. And, you know, the biggest thing is that, you know, with failure, there's always something to be learned. So, you know, just because you fail once doesn't mean you're going to fail everything. And that was something, like I said, with me, I probably needed those extra times to take it. It wasn't good to have to retake it, but I think it really helped me to retain the knowledge more as a clinician now, because I went through the repetition of doing it, got me more prepared when I went to take North Carolina boards. And even with North Carolina boards, that was notorious for being, you know, one of the harder states to get licensed in. And then I ended up passing out on the first time. So again, it's definitely something that you are going to have these obstacles. It's just, how are you going to deal with it? You know, are you going to be one that is going to be in a rut, or at least have that spirit, that mindset that I know I can get past it? Or, you know, someone like me, I'm just very open. I don't have a filter. I'm gonna let people know. And unfortunately, I will say I did go through a situation where in my first rotation after taking boards, we were just getting a run through of the clinic, and I had emailed the professor to, you know, to see our clinical director to make sure I had, you know, had to take a day off for retaking the board exam. And he knew, and he decided to call me out in front of everyone. So even if I was trying to hide it in that particular, you know, scenario, it wasn't. So, you know, there are people that don't feel comfortable talking about this, but I literally had no choice with, you know, he was like, does anyone else besides Sharky have to retake part 1? And I could have let that get, you know, I could have let that get the best of me. But I was like, oh, okay. Oh, I'm gonna show you. Okay. So yeah.
It goes back to that. It goes back to what we talk about as far as you know, just being better. You know, it's like just not being, because a lot, it goes back to the attitude. You know, your altitude. You know, they always say your attitude determines your altitude, right? Like how you're able to deal with adversity says a lot about you, right? How you're able to deal with things that it's not just, you know, just knowing that you'd have to retake a test again is already one part of the battle. But having to deal with anything public, or someone kind of putting you out there, calling you out, or even trying to minuscule you in a way, humiliate you. Yeah, that's the word. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole other level of adversity you have to face in that moment. You know, so another part to it too is understanding. Hey, listen, when if these type of things do happen, you know, Rochelle is kind of telling you guys, like, it is not over. You know what I mean? Like you have to kind of find it within yourself to understand how and why you got in this profession in the first place, and always let your why, your reason, propel you forward and see everything that you go through, because we all have our situations in the program. You know, fortunately for me, you know, I did pass the boards. You know what I mean? But and watch this. I passed my boards, right? But Miss Rochelle was probably 30 spots above me in the class ranking. She was beyond smart than me, way smarter than me. So don't get in this concept of thinking that, oh, it's only the smart, or this or that, or thinking it's all these things. No, at the end of the day, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, in my eyes, you know, she is smarter than I am, right? So it's even a shock for me to believe, like, how did I even get to this particular position? And that's probably even a shock for her as well. So that's why you go through these things that kind of shock you and they kind of hit you. You got to learn how to wrestle with these things and then overcome these things so that you can become a better person at the end of the day. Because it's not over when you go through these things. Everyone's going to go through their thing. If it's not going to be boards, like for me, it wasn't boards, but it was something else that I went through as well that almost took me out of the program. So everyone's going to have your come to Jesus moment. That's going to be like, hey, why am I here? What am I doing? But then you got to have no choice but to see it through. You know what I'm saying? You got to find it within yourself, your purpose and your reasoning, and you'll get there. You know. But hey, look, study, listen. But I will say this: if you're taking boards, if you know, and someone who's already an OD, you guys resonate with what we're talking about. What we're saying is factual. But if you're in the program right now, man, listen. Hey, study them questions, man.
Hey,
Study them questions, man. Like,
that was
study the
important.
questions.
That
I
was
Don't just
for
take,
important.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
you know,
Look,
study the
Kyle
question, man.
Will's
came
eye
back
manual,
like,
memorize
oh,
that book front to
dominant.
back.
Man. Yeah, man.
Michelle.
Like, don't just, like, I'm talking about, like, when you, and y'all know this, I might be beating a dead horse when I say this, but, like, you know, when y'all take these questions, because for me, what worked for me, I mean, all I did was questions. I almost stopped reading material. Almost 2 weeks before the exam, I stopped reading material. All I did was do questions. Every single day I did a test. I
Repetition.
simulated a test. I stopped my phone. I did a test. And what I did was when I got every question, I studied the question. So I don't just read the question and take the question. I study the question. That means, why are these answers even in here? And what are those other fillers they used to distract me? I need to know what that is too. So I need to know exactly what each thing is in the question so that I can understand the whole question in general. And now, like they said, you're going to start realizing these things. But man, when you get in here, man, when you really study these things, you got to find what works for you. And, you know, that's what worked for me.
Agree.
Yeah, great. I think these are all really great tips. And the whole point of this conversation is that boards are not the end all be all. I mean, they are the end all be all to get your license and for part one to graduate, but you will get through it. And it's a true test of your mental capacity to retain so much knowledge, your physical capacity to run on lack of sleep, lack of food, just lack of everything normal for months on end. But optometry school, like we talked about before, it's a journey and it's a test of like endurance and strength that you never would have ever thought that you had. But once it's over, you'll be so proud of what you've accomplished and like, wow, I can't believe I did that. And it really does change your character. It shows you where you're strong. It shows you where you're weak, but it definitely makes you a better person at the end of it. And you can see how much you truly can accomplish. And I think all of my colleagues have gone through their individual challenges and difficulties, but at the end of the day, we all became really successful. We all did it. And if you guys have any questions about boards, we're happy to answer them. Good luck. If you're religious, Christian, pray about it. We all prayed about all of our tests before we took them. We had one big prayer before we took all of our national board exams, family dinners, get some sleep, breathe, and you'll be fine. And if you don't, it's okay. You can retake it. It's not the end of the world. Thank you guys so much for listening and joining. Again, if you have any boards tips, boards prep topics that you want to share with our audience, link it below, put it in the comments, and we'll see you guys in our next episode. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.
Best of luck.